Yo, what is going on YouTube? Lob City 2.0 back at it once again to bring you guys my first ever episode of my new series, Justin Discussions. And first episode is going to be on something that I have been wanting to make a video on for so long, but I didn't know exactly how to, explain it or like how I was going to do this video, how I was going to go about making it, in other words. And I went back and forth. I looked over a lot of you know, um, videos about this topic specifically and arguments that are brought up. And I think I've come to a pretty good, conclusion where I can make a full-on polished video on it. So today I'm going to be discussing how come kid shows, specifically live action ones, are extremely different than the ones that I grew up with. And if you didn't know, I was born in 2002 during, so basically my childhood was pretty much the mid 2000s to, I guess, the early 2010s, I suppose, and how I guess still now, sort of, because your childhood doesn't exactly end until you're an adult when you're 21. So, yeah, take it where you leave it. Anyways, now I have complained many times about a lot of live action kids shows on Disney Channel, Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network, Disney XD, you name it. Hell, even some on Netflix for that matter. But I've never really understood how come they're just I've never really taken into consideration that other kids are enjoying this. And there's a reason why they constantly make these shows the style that they are right now. Because, well, we're living in a different generation of kids who have different tastes. They like things that I didn't. And not everyone is the same, but the popular consensus is that a lot of these shows that I really don't like on Nickelodeon, Disney XD, Disney Channel that are kind of in a sitcom format or like live action kids shows mostly suffer from the same problems. Now I'm gonna start off with Nickelodeon first of all. So when I was younger, I watched a lot of live action on Nickelodeon. Hell, that's where they pretty much got their start. So I really don't think it's a fair criticism to say cut down on the live action crap when that's the reason Nickelodeon even existed in the damn first place. So to me, that argument is completely ludicrous. And I think that they should keep doing live action. It obviously works for them. It's much easier to film. Plus, it brings in a lot of ratings. And Nickelodeon needs that, of course, to make money. So I would watch a lot of shows along the lines of Drake and Josh, iCarly, Zoe 101. If we're gonna get into later stuff, 100 Things to Do Before Middle School, I started watching during 7th grade. Uh, Stuff like all that, Keenan and Kel. I even went back and watched. It wasn't during my time, but I looked up episodes on YouTube and I got into those shows as well because they had the same charm. Now we have stuff like currently airing along the lines of Henry Danger, The Thundermans, Game Shakers, Nicky, Ricky, Dicky, and Dawn, and many, many others that I'm not going to name. So, one thing that really stood out to me is that all those shows I mentioned in the past were very simplistic shows. In other words, they had very simplistic plot structure, if that makes any sense, because they were all mostly about ordinary kids doing ordinary things, and that was relatable to the audience, that they could connect to it because, well, that's what the primary demographic was back then, just aiming at normal kids while also trying to appeal to adults and having, those more serious moments where there's tension and it feels a lot more mature than it needs to be, but it's welcome because it's able to be more diverse with the amount of demographics it's trying to speak to. In other words, like pretty much a whole family can enjoy the show, and everyone in that family, no matter what age range, can get equal enjoyment out of it, out of watching it, because the shows were just about, normal kids doing normal things put into believable situations with character that was very relatable, that you yourself probably had the same personality as, and, felt really genuine. The shows had better stories to them. I feel the episodes felt a lot more heart touching and had more thought and effort put into them, and the writing was absolutely just way better. Like They didn't rely on overly kiddish humor or really like gross out jokes or, just screaming, being obnoxious just to get a laugh. No, they actually wrote real jokes. They had actual comedy in the shows that was down to earth, mellow, and was kind of smart at times too. So nowadays, with shows like Henry Danger, Game Shakers, Nicky Ricky Dicky and Don, and pretty much all these others, most of them anyways, not completely all of them, because there are a few that I still do enjoy to this day, and it would be completely close-minded of me to say that all the live action shows on Nickelodeon are complete garbage. That's completely stupid. They're still good shows, and there is even mediocre shows that I don't think are that bad, but a lot of them tend to rely on being very in your face type of humor. They want to constantly scream, be loud and obnoxious just to get the kids' attention, I feel, from my perspective, anyways. Now, kids from this generation, I didn't grow up in this time period, so I do not know, or not grow up, but I'm not around the age demographic these shows are aiming for right now. Now, if I was that age, maybe my opinion would differ. I would probably in the popular consensus of liking these shows. And, I'm not going to say that kids can't enjoy them. That's completely fine. I'm just trying to compare it to in the past and right to now because Henry Danger, Game Shakers, these have really outlandish concepts. Like you have a kid working as a superhero sidekick, you have kids being like these billionaire game inventors, you have concepts like this family of superheroes, you have concepts like this set of quadruplets. Okay, that's a little bit relatable, kind of in a sense, but it's still wacky and over the top with how it does its concept. And you have this other show called Night Squad, which is about this magical beings and group of knights who go to this school, and it's all fantasy. You can really tell that they're trying to break the boundaries with how over the top and wacky they can make these concepts. And they do sound cool on paper. Unfortunately, my problem is the execution, where I don't feel that I really enjoy it too much. It's probably because of my age range, but I can pretty much go back and watch Drake and Josh, iCarly, any of those shows from the mid 2000s, hell, even some from the early 2010s, and enjoy them as much as I did back when I was around the age that they were going for. And I still really love those shows. They're up in my top live action kids shows of all time. Whereas with these, um, I don't enjoy them now, but I'm not sure if I would enjoy them as a kid though. And it just depends on your taste, in other words. Or, if you grow up with being around certain shows and watching them, you probably get that feeling from them. And that'll become kind of the thing that shapes your sense of humor. Alright, so I'm not gonna say that if I was around the age demographic for all these shows now that are playing on Nickelodeon, I would, like I would hate them. No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it all depends on taste and the shows you surround yourself with to get that sense of taste. Anyways, basically all of these Nickelodeon new shows, whether they're sitcoms or even regular live action formatted shows or dramas or comedies or mysteries, they all don't go about, you know, being outside the box or, you know, talking about serious subjects or anything like that. They don't really like to not play safe. And that's what bothers me. I feel like these new Nickelodeon shows are just there to be wacky, keep the kids entertained for like a 20-minute span, pull off a lot of cheap gags to get a lot of cheap laughs, and not really put any effort into building the craft. I get it's a live action kids show, but I do feel like kids maybe deserve a little bit more. I'm not asking for much, but I'm just asking for better solid story structure, better constructed stories in general, maybe have some tension, challenge the viewers, be able to insert adult jokes and also kid jokes at the same time, have a good balance where the whole family can enjoy it and they're not constantly cringing at whatever your kid is watching. That's just really my thoughts anyways. Nickelodeon really suffers more from pandering to kids and constantly repeating themselves with these really out there plots, but they don't really do much with them. They don't really take advantage of them. They just the only reason they're outlandish in the first place and so bizarre is just to get the viewers' attentions. When the episodes come out, you'll find that they're a lot less interesting than they let on. So yeah, that's what I feel like Nickelodeon suffers from the most when it comes to their live action programming, is that they overplay things way too much. They try to be in your face, pander, be cool and hip when it comes off to me as very embarrassing and kind of insulting to children. I think maybe that's a little bit too far, but that's just from my perspective. Now moving on to Disney Channel. Disney Channel is a special case now. This network I feel has turned to be really soft over the years and just gets worse and worse as time progresses. Maybe it's my sensitivities, but I really do feel like Disney Channel's live action programming as of right now is going a little bit in a better direction, but there are still a lot of kinks they need to work out. And I still do see problems even in the good shows that they have. So let me start off in back to like the old shows I used to watch on Disney Channel that were live action. Even Stevens, Phil of the Future, Lizzie McGuire, Wizards of Waverly Place, of course, is a classic. Um, so much more to name. There's quite a lot. Life with Derek, the first ever original Disney Channel show that was live action. I think that was even one of their first original Disney Channel programs in general. All those shows felt genuinely trying to appeal to both adults and kids, like I said with Nickelodeon. They were grounded in reality. While Phil of the Future had an outlandish concept like some others as well, it didn't shy away from the fact that it still could be relatable and connect to the audience at the same time. Plus, it used its wacky concept to actually make very interesting episodes. And there's a lot of unpredictable twists and turns that they use with that concept, and they're able to, explore different facets of the show that you couldn't see done before in a lot of the current live action Nickelodeon sitcoms with those amazing concepts, but they don't really do anything with them. Phil of the Future did something with it. Plus, it also felt very realistic. I know it's a show about a family from the future, but it also has its down to earth moments. It has good balance between being serious and being very comedic. It has good timing, in other words. Whereas with stuff like Henry Danger and Game Shakers, they have this amazing concept. They don't do anything with it. They just put it out there and they write lazy stories centered around it, and they don't really utilize that concept to its full advantage. They don't explore different possibilities with it, in other words. Phil of the Future takes risks and actually goes above and beyond, is what I'm trying to say. That's why it's different. Now, current live action Disney Channel shows as of right now would be Bizaardvark, Bunked, Sydney to the Max, Raven's Home, uh, Hannah Montana, which started the downfall of the live action on the network in general, Dog with a Blog. All these shows, except for not Hannah Montana, but Sydney to the Max and Raven's Home, they all fit into the same category in a sense. They're not like Nickelodeon where they're amazingly out there and wacky and they sound very cool in the concept department. No, that's not it at all. In fact, some of these plots for these shows actually sound a little bit, relatable and the audience can connect to them. But my problem is these shows always don't really try to have a good balance between being adult and mature and being kiddish. They rely on a lot of kiddish humor, and after a while, it just becomes an insult to me. They cram it in your face way too much, and the pacing is way too fast, where it just becomes quite annoying. All these shows are very irritating in my eyes, anyways. They don't have well constructed characters, stories, the acting is terrible, the directing is very off. Everything about it just feels very cheap and plastic. It's not realistic in any sense. I can tell that it's automatically a show, as if the damn laugh tracks couldn't tell me enough. But these shows just feel so unnatural, unfocused, and really uncomfortable to watch compared to a lot of the other live action shows in the past when it looked like the kids were having fun. The atmosphere was believable. You wouldn't think that you're watching an actual TV show that was scripted. But when you watch these shows on Disney Channel currently, at least most of them, they do feel really scripted. It feels so fake, like you're not absorbed or invested in anything that's going on because it's always constantly trying to hit you on the head with random stuff and be so wacky and over the top with it. Just like Nickelodeon, it's being too in your face. I wouldn't say they pander to Nickelodeon standards, but they more or less just don't really get it. While, yes, they might have lesser plots and they try to make relatable, more balanced characters that the audience can relate to, it doesn't work because, well, the writing is not good in my opinion. These characters feel very flat. It doesn't help that their actors and actresses' performances are very dull, like they have no energy to them. I'm not really feeling it. They obviously don't want to be there, so why should I even want to watch the show if even they're not going to care about it? In other words, so it just feels like in the past the kids were having more fun and their acting performances were very good because they had good directors and the writing was very well done. They had great material to work off of, where in these shows it just doesn't feel the same way. And if they are good actors, they just don't have good material to work with, much like Girl Meets World, which is a show that many people like and was very popular, but I really didn't like because it felt very bland and unrealistic to me. It felt like they were trying way too hard to, be like its predecessor when in reality they should have just stuck to what it was. And instead of, you know, just trying to be thought provoking and smart, they come across to me as very overly pretentious and at times kind of really a bore to me. So that's a complete shift from the original source material, which was Boy Meets World. So that's what I think of modern Disney Channel shows when compared to the old ones in the live action department. They're not really pandering, it's just that they're trying to do way too much with so little. There's little substance in any of these shows, and it's not really giving me much to like about them. And there's so many really noticeable flaws in them, and they just don't have any heart, in a sense. There are Disney Channel shows, live action, that don't really suffer from this problem, like Andy Mack, Raven's Home, how even Fastlane and Sydney to the Max currently, which are still airing on the channel, because yes, they have relatable situations and they write relatable characters, and they actually portray them as such. You know, kids look like they're enjoying themselves, having a good time. The directing is very professional, and it feels like an actual show, like I'm actually in there experiencing things before my very eyes, like I could actually believe these characters as real people because that's what they feel like. It's like I'm not watching a show. Plus, they don't have the annoying laugh track. They don't cram in annoying jokes. They don't try to hit you over the head with the humor or be loud and obnoxious to get your attention. They just tell a story. That's just what they do. I have no problem with shows that overload on the humor, but to me, I prefer shows with a story and trying to be more subtle about how it goes about doing multiple aspects, in other words. Now, Cartoon Network, I'm not going to talk about that. I don't even know why I mentioned it because Cartoon Network basically wasn't even supposed to have live action in the first place, and all their live action shows are garbage from what I saw, and no one wanted them in the first place. Plus, they never even did live action in the first place since it's called Cartoon Network. But I will say this, Cartoon Network was very desperate at the time of the end of the 2000s, sort of, and they were leaning towards the 2010s, and they were just trying to get ratings so bad that they threw up their hands and experimented with making these live action shows. It would have been fine if you didn't completely push all your cartoons to the side and said, hey, look at all this live action crap we're throwing at you all at once. And it wouldn't have, and again, my second point, it would have been fine if you didn't cram so much of them all at one time. And they flopped terribly because you had them all airing around the same time period and there were too much of them. No one wanted to see this. You were pretty much showing the middle finger to your audience by saying F cartoons and let's just push this live action gimmick for as long as we can. That's why it was a failure. Plus, number three, they didn't put effort into making these shows good. They were all cheaply made, clearly had nothing good going for them, and just felt like cash grabs just to get ratings, basically. That's all they were made for, just to get attention. It's not like they put actual thought into any of these shows. It's not like, they took the time to go over to creative direction and decide, hey, maybe this show needs this to be good or this. No, they didn't even care about any of that. They just greenlit all of these at once and threw them at the wall and saw what stuck, and nothing stuck. And that's why Cartoon Network no longer has live action. Listen, it's fine to do it. It's Cartoon Network, but okay, I get it. But you could have at least put out one at a time. Just put out one first. See how that does. And if that fails, then just completely just get rid of the whole idea. Putting them all out at once just pissed everyone off. And that's why I left Cartoon Network for a very long time. Now, finally, we're going to discuss Disney XD. Disney XD is in the modern era, so I can't compare it to anything from before since, well, Disney XD started in 2009. And around 2009, I was about 7 years old. So, it's not going to be really in depth here. But I will say this, Disney XD suffers from the same issues as Nickelodeon. They try to be hip and cool, and pander down to kids, and to me that's very low common denominator and insulting. I honestly believe kids deserve way better than that, and it just comes off to me as really just, what else can I say but insulting? They're trying way too hard to be cool, and that's just not necessary. I don't come to watching a show just to feel cool about it, okay? I'm not a hip person whatsoever. I come to watch a show to be entertained, and I come to enjoy it. I come to see the characters, the atmosphere you build around the characters, whether or not the acting is good, whether or not, these episodes don't feel like a gray blur to me, whether or not it's as forgettable as I think it's going to be when I go into watching it. That's what I think about. I don't think about how much you pander. Alright, pandering ain't gonna do nothing. In several years, all your kids are gonna grow up, and they're gonna pretty much ditch all this. You think that being cool is gonna be great now, but this is pretty much an argument for anything you can name in media that tries to be very low common denominator and trying to be hip, is that it never works because people outgrow it. After 5 seconds, everyone's moving on to the next fad. It's just not going to work. It makes everything on your network look very dated. And that's a lot of the shows that I, want to talk about here. Crash and Bernstein, Zeke and Luther, Lab Rats, Lab Rats Elite Force, Mighty Med. These all are nothing but XD, crazy, cool shows. I get a vibe from them that pretty much tells me that, and I really don't like it. They don't focus on being compelling, telling actual good stories, or having anything good that would make kids actually feel something. No, they prefer to go the lazy route and just be flashy, have terrible effects. I just don't like that. They have these cool concepts. There's one about bionic superheroes. There's another one about superheroes from comic books. Another one's about two skaters that are complete opposite personalities. There's hell, even a show about a talking puppet and this ordinary kid. But it just doesn't blend well together. It I don't care because the show is shallow as hell. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't keep me invested. It has boring humor, repetitive jokes. The characters are very bland, have no personality. I don't relate to any of them, in other words. I think you can see where I'm coming from here. It just feels like pretty much nothing. And if I wanted to get nothing out of a show, I would just stare at a blank wall for like my whole entire life. That would be more entertaining than watching any of this crap. Now, I do admit there are some good shows, like Mech X4, Aaron Stone, uh, well, Aaron Stone, I can't really think of any right off the top of my head, but the shows that are good on Disney XD don't try to be cool and hip. While they may hype you up with all of the action and they do kind of tend to break the boundaries, they use it to their advantage. If you don't follow what I'm saying, it's that they have depth. They have depth to them that makes them special. That makes me want to come back to them because they have characters that I can relate to, that I care about, that have good personality, and go through change throughout the entire series. And, they have really good choreographed action. It doesn't feel half-assed. A very good creative concept that they constantly take advantage of by putting out new ideas in every episode. And it doesn't feel dated either. They don't use teen lingo or anything like slang that turns you off immediately. They have the kids act like actual kids in these shows. The characters have actual character, in other words, and the humor and the jokes are in there, but they're not overdosed there. And they're actually good jokes and good humor. Now, if you don't, now I hope you know what I'm talking about here, because if you don't, well, just watch the shows for yourself. But it's very clear, assessing all these networks in general, and all the live action shows, that while yes, there are a lot of bad ones, in a technical sense, they're not bad to a lot of the kids of this generation, and I might be looking like a jerk criticizing them because, well, they're not in my age demographic. But what I like to see from shows is I like to see new things. I don't like to see the same thing, which all these newer ones seem to feel like. They all seem like to be the same things and they have the same problems. I'm tired of that. I want to see innovation. I want to see them go the extra mile and try something different that I haven't seen before. And I want to see shows that are able to be both appealing to pretty much anyone you can think of. I get that's a very tall task, and I get it's a kids show, but just because it's a kids show doesn't mean that it can't be mature and it can't be adult and it can't have a backbone to it. All right, if you don't know what I mean, just because you're a kids show doesn't mean you're free from excuses or criticisms. Just because kids are a certain age doesn't mean I can excuse their acting, okay? There are a lot of shows kids with kids that are really young and pull off amazing performances. And they are kid shows, sitcoms. You know what I mean? Just I wish we would get more of those. We still do occasionally, and I still watch live action kid shows to this day because, I always like to form new opinions on such. And that's really all I have to say. If you guys enjoyed this video, let me know and I'll make more of them. This has been the first episode of Just in Discussion, and I'll see you all next time. This is Lob City 2.0, signing out. Peace. I'm out.